expression of the ego. To be intucentric, to lead with our intuition, prioritizing self-control and self-expression while holding space to connect with others. Today, we're going to focus on the connecting with others part of Planit Butter's philosophy. Before we dig in, which I'm very excited to do, I want to make a little note on man, because I want to say a quote, but I want everyone to just be on the same page about this quote. When we say man and we're referring to all humans, we're just nicknaming humans. Like the word human, we're just cutting off the hue and saying man. Somewhere along the way, people have perceived, their perception has become that thought that that saying man is dismissive of woman, whatever. It's not, right? It's just a nickname. But that's a note on perspective, and which is why we need perspective dancing. As per me and Planit Butter, perspective dancing is flipping our perspective around by leveraging our critical thinking, creative thinking, and relentless optimism. Okay? So, my little quote: every man for themselves in the spirit of human connection. That is Planit Butter's essence. And what inspired that little quote is I watched Interstellar the other night at an outdoor movie theater overlooking a rice field and a pool under the stars and a full moon. How fucking cool is that? Like, if that's not the best setup for Interstellar, I mean, come on. And my brain, Interstellar, stars, full moon, rice field, cool. Pretty freaking cool. It was so magical. And I noticed that a big theme in the movie was essentially every man for themselves in the spirit of human connection. And Planit Butter's philosophy is essentially that, right? Prioritizing, leading with our intuition, prioritizing self-control and self-expression while holding space for connecting with others. Every man for themselves in the spirit of human connection. And again, before digging into, look, we're gonna just go layer by layer. We're gonna get in there. So, which reminds me, for Far Out Fundamentals, Planit Butter's chapter book, the opening, I have 3 love notes that onboards you. It's like, I call it a love note portal, because it's the portal into Planit Butter through these love notes. It's so good. Oh, I'm so excited for you guys to read it. Okay, so next little note is, I, a few months ago, smelled this perfume in this store. And at the time, I was like, oh, fun. I think I was just in the spirit of the moment, excited. And was waiting to run out of my Hermes perfume, Twilly. I've worn it for 10 years, and it's like a signature smell of mine. And then I finally ran out, but I'm in Bali, so I don't know how soon I'll be replacing it. Anyway, and I thought it'd be fun to mix it up. So I had smelled that one a while ago, and I haven't forgotten about it, which tells me there was something that I needed. I needed to get this perfume. It just kind of it stuck with me for months. And so the other day, I finally go and I get it. And when I got the box of the perfume, I opened it, and it said this quote: a mysterious yet mesmerizing fragrance, lignum, is inspired by the space between our impulse and response. The space allows us to make a choice to do or not to do, to be or not to be. And with that, allows us to grow, to be free, to live. That's what my freaking perfume box said. And as soon as I went home and I sprayed it, I was like, this is the cheapest perfume. It's so disgusting. That's why I had to return it. But I was meant to receive that quote. So isn't it funny? And that also is to the point of how I always try to remind you guys, I always remind you guys that our intuition It doesn't need to be some big thing, and it doesn't need to be really the predictable, quote unquote, thing, because nothing's ever really predictable. We can feel into things and know from a sense of intuitive knowing without knowing why. So I knew intuitively there's something about this perfume. I needed to get it. But it wasn't the perfume itself. It was the box. It was the quote. You see, like the quote is what serves, not the perfume. The perfume was cheap and gross, and I would never wear that. You see, it's the little things. But look at this. Look at this. I'm reading this quote now on my podcast in relation to Planit Butter's philosophy of Intucentricism, in relation to the connecting with others portion of the philosophy. Pretty freaking remarkable, wouldn't you say? I would. All right. Now, taking that with us into this connecting with others episode. You know what's really funny? That more often than not, people who speak English as a second, third, or even fourth language more quickly understand Planit Butter's philosophy of Intucentricism than a native English speaker. What does that tell you guys? It tells me that native English speakers need Intucentricism that much more than I ever thought. So now my thought of what the necessity is even bigger. And I already thought everyone on earth needed it, but now I'm like, oh, very specifically native English speakers really need to get on board with this. Crazy interesting, because I've been based in Bali for just over a year now, which is so cool. And in being based here, I mean, I'm from New York City, so I've been exposed to different cultures gratefully my whole life. However, being an adult and immersed in an expat community is like a whole other level of immersion, I think. Because something I've noticed too is that actually, while there are a mix of cultures in New York, still many people, just like all species, tend to kind of keep to their own, in a sense. And in an expat culture, keeping to our own is more so the culture itself. And that culture is a mix of cultures. So I meet people from all over the world all the time. And when business comes up, or just naturally when I say something that people are like, what? Because my philosophy just breathes out of me. And then I clarify, oh, it's from this, and they're like, oh, cool. And then they get it. But they get it so quickly. Whereas native English speakers over the years, I've found to have a much more difficult time understanding Intucentricism. And I think that's because, as I say, not all Westerners are native English speakers, but to simplify it for the sake of this specific point, Western philosophy is driven by ego, right? So they're so far driven by their ego that even conceptualizing the philosophy of Intucentricism is difficult to fathom. Just so interesting. And okay, we're going to cap that there and take it with us to, also from Interstellar, what stood out to me was they mentioned Newton's third law, which we all know intellectually as it's essentially to move forward, we have to let something go. Okay? And we're going to take that and apply it and root it in this connecting with others part of Intucentricism. Okay? In Interstellar as well, one of the things that they said is yearning to be with other people makes humanity. Which brings us to, again, that quote from the beginning, every man for themselves in the spirit of human connection. So our inherent yearning to be with other people is what makes humanity. Now, Planit Butter's philosophy with holding space to connect with others is in the interest of self-prioritization, so that that connection that we do yearn for is that much more expansive of a connection, fulfilling, loving, rewarding, evolutionary, on a higher frequency, because we're doing what's in our best interest and prioritizing our intuition. You see? Now, Intucentricism. Again, and I'm going to repeat it because we need that. I think. I hope. Tell me otherwise. Intucentricism is the development and expression of our healthy ego. Being intucentric is leading with our intuition, prioritizing self-control and self-expression while holding space to connect with others. Now, what I mean by holding space to connect with others is essentially two parts. On one hand, it's the integration of our three concepts to be intucentric, which is Planit Butter's three core methods: boundaries, confidence, alignment; our self-friendship practice, the commitment to embracing, understanding, and enjoying ourselves; and the PBJet Ring of Consciousness, our cycle for decision making: intuition, sensations, action, sensations again. Integrating those three concepts into our daily life naturally creates the clarity for what type of connections we are willing to hold space for. And once we clarify the connections that we're willing to hold space for, there's another layer of, as we continue to integrate those three concepts, there's the layer of actively holding the space. So there's clarifying the space of what we will hold for connecting. Then there's actively holding the space. And as we actively hold the space, we understand that that's the emotional and mental strength required to sustain the space, so that the types of connections we will allow to fill the space can be attracted to us. That's where we continue those three concepts on this new level. That new level is actively holding the space, letting it be space so that it can be filled. Then there's the actual fulfillment of the space, the connecting with others part of this, which becomes a reflection of having done that first layer of clarifying the connections we want. And then there's the holding of the space for the connections that we want. And then there's the reflection of having received the connection that we want. And in that, we circle it forward to referencing Newton's third law again. To move forward, we need to let something go. As it relates to holding space for connections, I don't know why, and we don't need to know why, but the way energy works is that we remove something, something fills it. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be a direct replacement, like I take out my earrings, there are holes in my ears. That worked out. That doesn't mean automatically earrings are going to fill these ear holes. But there's space now on my body energetically for something else. And actually, perfectly, it's this flower. Because I had both on for a minute. I had my earrings on and then I decided to pick up the flower. And when I put the flower on, I was like, this feels like a lot of energy, like too much. Like it didn't fit. It didn't all fit energetically. It was like, this is a lot happening here. Like, yeah, that's it. So I removed my earrings because I needed to move forward with this flower. I needed to remove those earrings, energetically speaking. And as it is for holding space to connect with others, sometimes it's removing not necessarily a specific person to replace with a new person. What it is just clearing space in our life so that we can connect with others. So it is on one hand clearing out space for people, which requires leaving other people because of the energetic magnitude that individuals hold and the emotional work and mental work required to sustain connections in our lives. But it's not a direct replacement. It's not like if you need to ditch your best friend, you don't ditch your best friend because you're automatically going to replace the best friend. You just are creating space. And then you hold that space, feel fulfilled within yourself in that time. And then with time, whatever time is, I talk a lot about time. But right now, we'll just say shifting. As we're shifting, evolving, as the earth spins and the universe does some magic and we show up for ourselves, theoretically, a new best friend will eventually appear because you'll be perpetually practicing self-friendship, integrating the 3 core methods, and your Planit Butter Jet Ring of Consciousness, doing what's in your best interest, holding the space so that when you do align with somebody who can then become your best friend, you'll be able to connect with them because you will have held the space to do so. So that's pretty cool. And another note on that is that sometimes we need to fully actualize something within ourselves and sustain it, while other times we need to fully actualize something and release it, which I find really interesting in relation to connecting with others, because if every person is a mirror, which they are, then if we are seeing a mirror and we are interacting with this mirror, then that means part of ourselves needs to continue to be actualized through this mirror. And then we decide if we want to release that mirror or sustain it, expand it, get more curious about it. That's up to you. Which reminds me too, we need to actively position ourselves to receive those connections that we are holding space for. To be in a receptive mode requires actively positioning ourselves to receive. That's the holding space again. And we do that by trusting our no, embodying indifference, and continuing to believe so that we can see. And how do we do that? Again, it's the 3 core methods: boundaries, confidence, alignment, self-friendship, the commitment to embracing, understanding, and enjoying ourselves, and the Planit Butter Jet Ring of Consciousness, our cycle for decision-making: intuition, sensations, action, sensations again. Far out fundamentals, guys. That's the name of the chapter book because everything boils back down to that, no matter what I talk about. So, really cool. No matter what anybody talks about, I can boil it down. Truly. Because it comes down to our boundaries. Holding space to connecting with others is boundaries. Keep respecting your boundaries. Keep respecting your boundaries. Keep respecting your boundaries. Clarify your boundaries. Respect your boundaries. Clarify your boundaries. Respect your boundaries. Clarify your boundaries. Respect your boundaries. Hold space. You see? Now, the trick to clarifying and respecting our boundaries is being lovingly merciless with ourselves. Lovingly merciless with ourselves. With all your love and all your strength, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, prioritizing our intuition, self-control, and self-expression while holding space or connecting with others. No matter fucking what. Lovingly merciless with ourselves. So no matter who it is, what you think it is, how this connection showed up, the weight it holds for you, we need to let things go so that we can move forward. Lovingly merciless with ourselves. It's not easy, but we can choose to make it fun. Which brings us to presitude. How do we be lovingly merciless with ourselves? In order to integrate those three concepts, three core methods, self-friendship practice, and the Planit Butter PBJet Ring of Consciousness, we must practice presitude, a Blizzard's dictionary term, the state of being present in thankfulness. I combined present and gratitude because I recognize this is how I come up with basically everything that is Planit Butter. I self-reflect and I self-connect about the way I handle stuff. And then I turn it into a concept because I recognize how valuable it is. I'm like, damn, I'm really good at handling stuff. So I recently had a very challenging few weeks, and I realized that what I did to fall forward, as I talk about in episode 65 and 66, as well as Planit Butter's supplication, self-friendship article, step up, step in, fall forward. In order to do that, I practiced presitude, the state of being present in thankfulness, or really through thankfulness, both simultaneously, which is why I recognize the need for one word to communicate it. Because in order to release something and move forward, and specifically to connect with others, I needed to stay so fucking present in myself, in my essence, in my surroundings, because the only way forward is present. Otherwise, the accumulation of our past experiences that has created who we are right now, which is the familiar, becomes a risk of falling backwards. To fall forward, we are in presitude, state of being present through thankfulness. So in my challenging time, I realized that what I was doing was creating ways to practice gratitude in every present moment. So what did I do? I said, every time I was like, stay present, stay present, stay present, because it was such a challenging time. And I was like, my energy was like here, right? But my body is in the familiar and my mind is like oscillating, as I talk about, which is wavering between who we've been and who we want to be. So to fall forward and transcend from that oscillation period, we need to be in presitude. So I would find myself in these moments of like the oscillation, and it's like, one thing I say is get back up here. That's not enough. Presitude. I said, I'm so happy and grateful for blah, 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 blah. Whatever was in my immediate surroundings and immediate experience that I could perspective dance into being grateful for. Gratitude is such a high frequency that it sustained my presence, it increased my frequency and my mood, and allowed me to fall forward. So I was like, I got to tell the people on earth, you little humans, about gratitude. And in relation to myself in holding space to connect with others, I was able to use my mental and emotional strength that I talked about before to hold that space through my self-reliance so that the connections that I was holding out for could come through. Had I not been able to hold that space, which would mean I wouldn't be practicing self-friendship, honoring the 3 core methods, or using the Planit Butter Jet Ring of Consciousness, by default, as humans are, I would succumb to the familiar, which many people kind of, many people struggle with holding this space because it's often talked about or viewed as like a void rather than conscious holding of space. Like it's a boundary, right? A boundary of space. You're protecting this space for connecting with others. What type of connections are you willing to have? And holding space until they are the type of connections that we are willing to have. And relying on ourselves during the time of holding that space so that when those people show up, we welcome them slowly, gradually into that space while we're still the ones holding the space. It's not being filled by default, by familiarity. It's not being filled because it's lacking. It's being filled because we are allowing what we want to be where we want it. It's boundaries. Holding space for connecting with others is another massive layer of our boundaries, which is why before we were going back and forth with clarify boundaries, respect boundaries, hold space, right? So again, presitude, we can remind ourselves in any given moment, I'm so happy and grateful that I'm able to share my philosophy with the world through this computer screen right now. So happy and grateful I can share my philosophy while staring at this gorgeous pool and villa that I get to live in. I'm so happy and grateful that I can breathe and talk. I'm so happy and grateful that I have a pen in front of me that I can write with both hands because we have the luxury of 2 functioning hands. I could go on all day. You get it? Then another way we could stay present, which is a little bit more silly. I made this one up when I was meditating the other day. I said, I don't think I present. Because it made she giggle. Well, it made me giggle. And it reminds me of present. So it's like, I'm not thinking, I'm present, which is a thought in itself. Duh. But I'm not thinking about things. It's letting thoughts pass. Such is meditation. Okay. So I don't think I present. Lastly, ever-present intentions breeds creativity. So in the spirit of holding space to connect with others, as we hold the space, that is by default our intentions. As an underlying intention ever present within us, that we are holding space to connect with others as per the boundaries that we've clarified and respected, We create the connections we want with others. Ever-present intentions breeds creativity. Again, that can be applied to anything, but we're talking about with that. I guess that could be the last. I could talk all day. Woo. No, I'm going to say this last thing. There is a significant difference between slow and intentional versus slow, careless. When we hold space through self-prioritization, that space is filled naturally, slowly, and intentionally because we're rooted in our 3 core methods, our self-friendship practice, and our Planit Butter Jet Ring of Consciousness. There's no rush to fill the space. It's a gradual shift. It's not necessarily time, like I said before. It's shift. We're shifting by leading with our intuition, prioritizing self-control and self-expression as we hold space to connect with others. That was a big one. Wish you guys could smell this. Ooh. All right. Email me any questions you have about connecting with others in your world or about Planit Butter's philosophy. myplanettoyours@gmail.com. myplanettoyours@gmail.com. Thanks for visiting Planit Butter, my world made of sparkly peanut butter, where I hopefully inspire you to think critically, creatively, and approach life with relentless optimism, believing in the magic, developing and expressing your healthy ego. Through the practice of self-friendship, the commitment to embracing, understanding, and enjoying ourselves. 3 core methods: boundaries, confidence, alignment, and the Planit Butter Jet Ring of Consciousness. Our cycle for decision-making, intuition, sensations, action, sensations again. Cycle repeat. Keep listening. We'll get there together. It's not easy, but we can choose to make it fun. From my planet to yours, Blizzard. Planit Butter's chapter book, Far Out Fundamentals, The Planit Butter Renaissance, presale is live on planitbutter.com. Limited presale and perks now through May 2025. It's March 2025. Short window, baby. Please subscribe and review the show wherever you're watching or listening. I love to hear your thoughts. I'll see you next Thursday. Thanks for landing on Planit Butter. From my planet to yours, Blizzard.